Inge LEHMANN is a Danish seismologist who was born in Copenhagen, Denmark, on May 13, 1888. Her father was a psychologist while her mother stayed at home. She went to a high school that was very progressive for its time because it promoted gender equality. Her college life was very inconsistent as she did stop-and-go college due to poor health the first time and fatigue of work the second time, but she would then go on to finish her degree at Copenhagen University in 1918. Even though LEHMANN grew up and went to a very progressive high school, her gender role was still considered something to be more of a social outcast. While LEHMANN was growing up, she had an interest to pursue mathematics for college, but her parents refuted that idea of her pursuing anything math-related or science-related because that just was not the social norm at the time. She, regardless, still went to college. In Nenman College, there was a discrimination towards young women at the school. They actually put severe restrictions on young women attending at their college. Even after the education, she talked about how intense her work ethic had to be because of a woman working as a discoverer. She was easily vulnerable to be criticized from the public. Being a female at this time, it was very uncommon what LEHMANN was doing. This made her a social outcast during her time. LEHMANN's greatest contribution was discovering that the inner core of the Earth was solid. During that time, the theory was the Earth had a single molten core. But she figured out by reading the measurements of seismic waves from earthquakes, the theory was inconsistent with the measurements. LEHMANN would go on to analyze more seismic wave measurements of multiple earthquakes to come to the conclusion the Earth had a solid inner core and an outer molten core. She was able to produce seismic waves that match her theory. Other seismologists would also test her theory and would later come to accept it. So how did LEHMANN develop an interest in seismology? Well, she developed an interest in seismology after being an assistant for the head of the Royal Danish Geodetic Institute. After working for an assistant for a while, she developed an interest in seismology and would go on to get a master's degree in seismology and become the head of the department. Studying seismology made sense for her in Denmark because Denmark experienced frequent earthquakes to analyze. Inge LEHMANN would end up living for over 104 years, becoming one of the longest-lived female scientists. She was an advocate for gender equality, and she always sought to prove that women can work in the field of science. Because of her contribution to geological science, the American Geophysical Union in 1997 established an annual award named after her to honor her. An individual in the future would go on to win her award in any category to the geological science. Inge not only became one of the longest living female scientists, but also she goes down in history for being an integral role in geological science, and that would be the reason she would get an award named after her. After learning a bit about Inge LEHMANN, it is very interesting to think about how her high school, the importance of gender equality was not a true issue for the majority of the world, and only her high school believed to push gender equality. Discrimination in the modern day does hinder the influence of the world because people would not have discovered Inge LEHMANN if they just doubted women. And this is one of the reasons I believe that discrimination does not belong in the modern day. Because if you look at the idea of marginalizing a workload of a women, they have to work much harder currently, and it's not fair for them to try and get the same recognition when their work might be better than others.